Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Today we have Deirdre. She has a science degree in biology with a minor in chemistry and forensic science, and she has worked as a forensic scientist, a chemist, and a biochemist. And she's been in the pharmaceutical industry working as a scientist for about 10 years now. So, Deirdre, thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
We're happy to have you. So, you've told us that you've been having experiences since you're a teenager, around 15. Please let us hear your experiences.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I should start where it started. When I was a younger teenager, I started having some out of body experiences and like really strange visitations, different beings, and that went on throughout my life pretty much till present day. So almost 20 years later, it's still a regular thing that I've sort of learned to deal with. I think I have a couple stories of things that happened, which I can't explain, that I'd love to share with you guys as well. Um, I think the first one is when I was about 18. I went on a walk with my friend who had come here from out of state. She's about 2 states away. We went on this walk to another friend's house because at the time I didn't have a car. And I'd gone on this walk many times. I knew how long it took to get there. You know, I knew the route. I'd been on it many, many times. It went down this canal trail, sort of in between the suburban neighborhoods, basically. And so that's where we cut through. So we went down that canal trail together. And I just remember at the time thinking to myself, this is taking a lot longer than it normally does. I mean, it felt like we had been there for maybe an hour on this trail, and it should have only gone up maybe like quarter mile, half mile, something like that. And my friend, she asked me too. She's like, this is taking a really long time. I'm tired. She's like, are we almost there? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And at the time I was kind of looking around. I thought to myself, like, I don't really recognize these houses. This just feels so strange. And we both kind of commented to each other, like, this feels not real. This feels really strange walking through here. And we couldn't figure out why. It was just very, very strange feeling. Eventually, we did get to the end of that trail, and the rest of the route was normal. We got to my friend's house, and my friend who walked with me, Kay, she sat down at his table, and her purse just like burst open. It fell apart, and all of her credit cards just splattered all across the floor. Which I was like, well, that's kind of weird. They're usually like in the little slots and everything, but it's almost like somebody just threw them in there. So we go in and we pick up her credit cards and all that stuff. She's looking at them and she's like, I'm missing my debit card. And I was like, oh, that's terrible because you're here on vacation. She can't really like go back to her bank and get another one mailed to her. So we are like, okay, we better backtrack. Let's go back the route we came. Well, I'm sure it probably fell out on the way. So we went all the way back. We backtracked. We didn't find it. We backtracked a second time. We didn't find it. Finally we gave up and we said, okay, we'll cancel your debit card. She ended up pulling the funds from her account. She put them in my account so I could just like give her money for the trip. So we made a lot of jokes about me being her new sugar mama for a couple days, and everybody laughed. It was fine. But the weird part of the story, the really weird part, was, let's see, this was about 1 p.m. when we went on our walk, right? And she had flown in the previous night. She got in at about 9 o'clock at night. And the previous night, I took her to Denny's. It was the only thing open. So we went to Denny's. We had something to eat, and she paid with her debit card, and I paid with my debit card. Everybody was happy. And so fast forward back to the day that we went on our walk, that was the card that went missing. So it was very strange, that, okay, that's one that's gone. We know you had it here. We know it made it here, on your trip. But so we knew that she had it, and then so she canceled her card, and then it was later this day, she got a call back from her mom. Her mom said, we found your debit card, and it was turned into a police station in her hometown, and that was 2 states away. And we're like, that is really weird. We called her bank, and now we had thought, at the moment we had thought, okay, well, maybe you left it there, maybe you left it back in your hometown before you flew out here, maybe that's what happened. So she calls her bank and she calls to confirm, look, I canceled it, it's missing, and where I was on the phone with her, she had it on speakerphone, and the bank said, okay, yeah, you must have just left it there. We'll cancel it and mail you a new one, and you're just gonna have to figure it out until then. So then we're like, okay, cool. And then she was like, no, wait a minute. I thought I paid my dinner last night with that card. And the lady's like, no, I don't see it there. And literally, while we were on the phone with her, she goes, oh my God, the charge just came up. Yeah, it was, you used that card here, and now it's back in your hometown 2 states away. It's been like, what, from 9 p.m. to now, 1 in the afternoon the next day. So it's been barely 12, a little over 12 hours, right? For somebody to find her card on a canal trail in the middle of nowhere, drive to the airport, get on a plane, fly to her home state, drive to her hometown from that airport, and then turn it into a police station by hand in her hometown, having no idea that her debit card belonged to, like, it doesn't have her address on it or anything like that. So how would they even know where to take it? So that kind of like made us really scared, because we thought something really strange did happen to us, and it's almost like somebody wanted us to know it. You know what I mean? So that was the first really strange event that happened that I just could not explain. And I still, I mean, I have a lot of ideas, but I mean, there's no real way of knowing how that happened. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. So, what would you say? What would you say is like your most leading, I guess, idea or speculation of what actually happened here, or how could that occur?
I mean, we both thought it was maybe some kind of abduction at the time, or some kind of, maybe, maybe we had found, I mean, know this is really strange, some kind of wormhole, and you know, in between time and space, and fallen into something and back out of it. I mean, I'm not sure, but that's what I thought initially. But then, looking at it, it's like I said, it had to have been something intentional. Like something intelligent was involved here, because like I said, it's just, how would you know? I'm going to take something out of your purse that that you had for a fact, hours before, and I'm going to go and transport that, like thousands of miles away, basically, and turn it in by hand to a, get it to a police station of all, like, what is this, 1950? People find a debit card now, they just throw it in the trash, like they know, oh well, it's probably somebody's already canceled this card. I mean, it's just so strange to me. I mean, if you find it at a mall or something, yeah, maybe you take it to security, but you find it on a trail, you're gonna, okay, I'm gonna keep this with me, get on a plane, fly somewhere else, and then drive it, just, and then how would you know that that was where she lived? You know what I mean? So, yeah, we've never really figured that out, but those are my top two theories. It had something to do with um, different dimensions, different, some kind of folding of dimensions, or some kind of abduction that we don't remember, something like that, right?
So, well, number one, did you ever walk back down the trail, and you still can't figure that out? But you said that houses didn't look the same. So you've been down the trail again, and you or did you not walk back down the trail? And oh yeah, just go from there.
So the same day that it happened, we did walk back, all the way back, the whole way, and then we doubled back again. And as we walked back that same day, we were commenting to each other. We were saying, like, why is it so much shorter this time? Why does it look different? You know, so it felt perfectly normal and fine that when because we had the third friend with me, he went with us because he felt bad that she lost her card. So now we had a third person, and we walked back, and then we walked back to his house again, and everything took the normal amount of time. It felt normal. Everything was recognizable. So we did do that the same day. I mostly avoided that trail after that though. So
Were there anything? Was there anything like when you were on the trail and things looked different, and then you went back and you walked the trail again? What were the things that stood out that were different or the same? I mean, I would think that maybe it was small differences, like when you're walking through the trail, all the trees are the same and everything, but those houses were different. But this time when I came back, all the trees were the same, but there were no houses. Or what was the difference with the trail?
I think it was mostly the houses, because the way that I navigate the world, I don't usually go by streets, and those kinds. I typically go by landmarks. I think this is like supposedly this is more common in women than men, but I don't know. But anyway, I mean, so I'm always kind of mentally looking for those familiar things and those landmarks, and so I was seeing the houses, and I was like, none of these look familiar, and they're all kind of more samey than they normally would be because that's an older neighborhood, and a lot, those houses in that neighborhood tend to be a little bit more different. I don't know. Have you guys ever seen the movie Vivarium by any chance? No, you should. um, but it gives this really creepy vibe of it's like this alternate dimension that these people get trapped in, and it's a little suburban neighborhood, and every house is identical. It's just like really creepy. That's sort of the vibe I got. Like the top of every roof was identical, and it felt like you're walking in a loop. You would walk past three houses, and then it feels like they're the same ones. You walk past the same three houses, and you're like, this is really weird. You know what I mean? So that's all I can recall now. But at the time, I just remember we both noticed that. You know, independently of each other. We looked at each other. We're like, you feel like this is taking too long. This Something's not right here. So
What a trip.
Yeah, and was there like any? Were you going to say something, Leaf?
No,
Yeah. Was there any like odd feeling? Could you describe any odd feeling at all, like outside of just feeling like you noticing that I guess you could say the environment was a bit peculiar? Any type of almost like an electromagnetic feeling of sorts or something like that?
yes, but not at the time that it happened. She was staying at my house at the time. So she slept on the floor in my room, and I remember that night when we're getting ready for bed, we're both, falling asleep. I felt this really intense vibration, just. And what's weird is it was quite pleasant. It actually felt really nice. It's almost like when you're in, like a jacuzzi or something, and you just have that constant buzzing feeling, and it's warm and it's pleasant. And the next day, she tells me, she goes, your house feels so nice. Like I felt this, like it's almost like being in like a wave pool, and I felt like this weird energy, and it felt so good and so comforting. And I was like, I thought that was you. I was like, wow, she just feels so nice. Like I don't know what she's doing, but it's like she vibes or something. And then we were like, well, it wasn't me, So we both experienced that too, and it was really intense, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't a bad feeling at all. It was the opposite. So
and that was later that night.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fascinating. It's. I mean, for most people, I'm sure they just say, "Oh, this sounds like it was just some weird thing." Well, I mean, why would you even think twice about it? But if you lived it, it's completely different.
yeah, and I think the other part of it too is you have two people reporting the exact same thing. You know, if it had been just me, I can chalk it up to I'm just weird feeling, or I'm crazy, or something like that. But the fact that both of us had the exact same, gut feelings about what was going on, and then this exact same subjective experience, it tells me that there's something else going on there.
Yeah, and also that I mean, and again, maybe the trip through the trail would have been something to write off, but then the debit card thing happens, and that makes it even. It just makes several interesting things going on at once.
Yeah, I think if that had not been part of it, then we both would have just written off the whole thing as, wow, that was weird. But like I said, it really flew in our faces of something strange happened here, and now we're forced to deal with this, and we kind of were forced to accept it in that way. So that, both of us really panicked when we found that out, because we knew there was no way that that was normal at the time.
There's definitely, I've noticed just from other experiences, and myself included, that there's sometimes almost like you mentioned, almost like a deliberate plant to really question what happened, like really to question the experiences and be like, this shouldn't happen. It seems like almost as if it was by design. And there's definitely seems to be an overall aspect of time and the manipulation of time, and how these events sometimes are seeded in individuals' lives that lead them to other events or other experiences. And just going back to some of the other experiences we've talked to, that seems very, very consistent. And again, myself included. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it like I said, it's almost like somebody deliberately, wanted us to know that this was done by an intelligent force, and it was not some freakish force of nature. It was something that somebody did on purpose.
And this was one of the first events that you've had. Do you feel like this somehow is connected to anything else that's happened to you since that event?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, especially the part where in the evening we both had that intense energy sensation. That I was pretty familiar with, because that had been ongoing for a few years prior, and then kept going on, for many years after. But that had just been myself, so I had pretty much just kept that sort of thing to myself, thinking, well, this is, an experience that only I'm having, and I don't really understand it, but, I can't say it's objectively real in any way. I mean, it's subjectively, it feels real, of course, but, that was one of the first times that I was really forced to face the reality that it wasn't just me, and that there was something, completely independent of myself that was involved. So that was a little hard for me to deal with at the time.
Hmm. And you said that you'd felt the energy thing for years prior. Is that connected to the out of body experiences?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I would basically be pulled out of my body, and like these beings would do this sort of like energy treatment on my body. Sometimes they would do other things, but that was the primary thing. And they would do this every maybe 2 weeks for from my early teens up until my late 20s, I want to say. Every 2 weeks. Almost, I mean, not on the dot, but I did go back when I was in college. I took like a 3 year period because I journaled it extensively, and I basically plotted out like how often is this happening, when is it happening, and I could take like in any time period of 3 or more months, which is like enough data, right? And how many times is this happening? And so basically, I would just divide by the days, and it came out to almost exactly 13.8 days consistently, like no matter how I would cut it. Isn't that strange?
You
Well,
know,
that is strange. And also, while this was happening, did you talk about it with your parents or any other friends, or did you really just keep it to yourself in your journal?
It's not something that I wanted to tell my parents because, not because I don't think they would be open minded, but because I just don't want to make them sad. I mean, your parents, they want to think that they are protecting you and they're doing a good job of that. And it just breaks their heart when they feel like, they have no control over something harming you or hurting you. So, I've told them a little bit, particularly my mom, but I try not to talk about it in detail because I just don't want to make them sad. But other people in my life, that are close to me know about it. Some of my close friends, my husband, and that's some people I know online, of course, that I talk to. But yeah, it's a little hard because I don't think I've really ever met somebody else that's had very similar experiences to mine, so it's quite isolating.
Well, I guess if Adam doesn't have any questions, I was gonna say to tell us more details about it from early on. But I think Adam, you have a question.
That was my exact thoughts. So yeah, if you could share really, the encounter, or like what you really, what the beings were, or what happened to the best of your memory.
Yeah, and what you really know or think or believe they were trying to get from you, do to you, trying to accomplish.
Oh, that's a big question. All right.
Do your best.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Um, yeah. So when I was younger, I wasn't really told anything about why that was happening. So it was really difficult. It took a lot of time before I started getting some answers. Um, but yeah, so basically, it started when I was young. I'd have these out of body experiences. It would usually be one or two different beings that would like pull me out of body. And basically, it started with sort of my, like my solar plexus area of my body. They really focused on that. And so they would like put their hands on it or almost inside of my abdomen. Sometimes it felt like it wasn't something that I could visually see, but it was something that I could feel. um, it was I just remember, especially the early times, it was so excruciating. It was so painful. um, it felt like I was being electrocuted, and it also felt at the same time like I was a balloon that was being filled with too much air and I was gonna burst. I mean, it felt like torture. It was absolutely horrible. And I'd think, wow, this is going to kill me. I'm going to die. I can't bear this. And then just when I think, yeah, I'm going to die. This is it. Then they would ease off and basically let me recover for a little while, and then it would start again. The next 2 weeks or whatever.
So, real quick, can you describe the beings?
Yeah, I mean, they look like humans, except that they're much taller. Their eyes are a little bit bigger. They tend to be really beautiful for, our standards. It's just that, if you saw one of them walking down the street, you would think at first, okay, that's a person. That's a really tall person, maybe like 6 or 7 foot tall, or probably more like 7 foot tall. Um, but if you saw their face, you would see they're just a little bit off, that you would know like there's something not right. They don't look like they're human. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think some people would maybe call them the like Pleiadians, but I don't remember if Pleiadians are taller than normal. And then maybe tall whites as well. But I don't know if those are Pleiadians as well.
Yeah, generally, Pleiadians seem to be like the ideal. There can be variations in a lot of the reports, but generally they seem to be like ideal, almost perfect humans, and like almost too perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost too perfect is it's
Yeah.
it's really unnerving. I mean, you look at them, they're like, oh wow, you're so beautiful, but it just really, honestly, creeps me out.
Yeah, I have my speculations about the Pleiadians, but that's for another time.
That's fair.
We'll go on.
I'm trying to think where I left off. Okay, hang on. Yeah, so yeah, they do look like that. It can be a little unnerving, and I I try to avoid eye contact, and maybe that's rude, but I sort of stopped caring about that a long time
Question.
ago.
Question. You try to avoid eye contact, and typically in a lot of abductions, a lot of people say that when they make eye contact with the Greys, that's when they get you. When you made eye contact with them, was there anything telepathic or anything like that going on, or did you ever have conversations with them in a sense in the astral or the out when you're out of body or whatever you'd like to call it?
Yeah. There's an answer to both of those. Yes, I avoid eye contact for a reason. When they do make eye contact with you, it's a lot easier for them to, I guess, influence you mentally or emotionally. It's easy for them to knock you unconscious that way. So you kind of have to be really careful. It's also easy when they touch you, so avoiding that too. But I mean, really, there's nowhere to go. So at some point, it's just gonna happen. But I just don't like doing it anyway. Um, and let's see, what was the other? Oh, as far as conversation, they have a language, and I'm a little bit familiar with it because I hear them using it. Um, I don't. I kind of understand a little bit because it's been so many years. So it's kind of like when you're in a foreign country and you just hear it all the time, and so you can pick up some little things, but I can't really repeat things. I've always been horrible at language. I wish I was better at picking up languages, but I've never been able to do it. But at least I can kind of understand. For the most part, they just use English, which is fine. But there's some level of like emotional telepathy, if that makes sense. So you can kind of get a feel for things that way too.
And I think the other fascinating thing is I'm also thinking of this still happening to you in the physical world, but this is all when you're being pulled out and then worked on energetically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's how it goes.
And this happened for years. So as this went on, I mean, like you said, it started very early on, preteen years, and it went through. Um, and every 13.8 days, I mean, I'm just starting to think of how you would think, oh man, it's going to happen again tonight. It's going to happen again tonight, and how anxious you may have started to become. And again, the other odd thing about this is that it's not physical. You're being pulled out and brought somewhere. Oh yeah, that's another thing. When you were being pulled out, did you did you know where you were going? Did you go far away from your body? Do you know if you were just hovering over your body?
So sometimes it would just be where I was, so I'd be in my own home. But over time, like they kind of created this little, it's my childhood home kind of place, and I usually they just stick me there because I think the thought was that it was familiar to me, and maybe I would feel a little bit better about spending time there. But so most of the time it's that. But occasionally it's completely foreign places, or you know, it could be what looks like another planet or what looks like a spaceship or something like that. More rarely that sort of thing has happened, but I mean, I do feel like there's been at least an attempt to make me feel comfortable when it was possible. So I guess there's that.
There's that. But other than that, I feel like I'm going to explode like a balloon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Well, Adam, did you have another question?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think the order I want to do this in. Yeah, so you mentioned the solar plexus, so it seems that you're familiar with like the chakra system. So was there any, when you describe like almost like energetic work on you, did you see any tools, any apparatuses, or was it primarily them using their, I guess, their physiology or whatever that may be to influence you? And I guess additionally, was there any residual in your physical body nights after or any other time that I guess you've been taken or I guess manipulated in some way?
Yeah, so it's typically like a hands-on thing. If you know what sort of like Reiki is or healing hands type of, it's typically that. Very rare it would be like an instrument or something like that. It's usually like a hands-on thing. And then to the second thing, that was the other part of it was when I would come back the next day, I would feel like high as a kite, for probably like good 2, 3 days afterwards, every time, and almost like, and I wouldn't eat. So I was severely underweight for years and years because not because I didn't want to eat, it's just that I would always forget to eat because I had so much energy in me, and it just felt like it felt like there was just had electricity all over and I had all this energy and I just didn't even think that I needed food. And then it would sort of fade away. There wouldn't be like like a crash or anything. It would just sort of, fade off after a few days, and then I would feel normal again. Um, but yeah, there are other times where it would be like really severe, where I stayed home from school a lot and work, uh, and I would sleep it off. I'd sleep for like 16 or 18 hours. So that happened. Pretty. I want to say frequently, but pretty often, I guess.
And again, when do you feel like you kind of figured out what they were doing, or did you ever get to a point where you knew why they were messing with you for any reason?
Yeah, that was years later, because I kept asking and asking, and I wasn't really
Hmm.
getting good answers. And then when I was more like an adult, then they started telling me things about it. And I do know at least why, according to them, because I want to put this out there that it's, look, just because they say something to me, that doesn't mean that I believe it. It's just that that's what I was told. So it's not necessarily, I don't just take things that people tell me. I don't care who they are, and believe that. So just to put that out there. But according to them, so there's a purpose for this, and it's supposed to be helpful. It's supposed to help with my basically metaphysical growth, and evolution, and then overall help them understand how to push other people and our world to basically evolve to get to the point where they are. And ultimately, that is, their hope. And so, if you ask them, they're trying to do a good thing. It just so happens that, there's a small population of people that are going to be, you know, hurt by it, I guess you could say. Maybe not harmed, but definitely hurt.
At the very least, you have PTSD from it, some sort.
Yeah, I do I have been diagnosed with PTSD.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
then.
yeah, and do you believe them?
You know, yeah, I do mostly. I'm just a really cynical person, you know. I mean, I think it helps to believe that stuff because at least, I feel a little bit better about it. But I also understand that, they did this, what they did to me, they did to other people, and other people did not survive, basically. I know that. Um, and for them, the thought process is, well, this is helping, on a greater level, so this is acceptable, but for us, we have kind of a different moral structure, and we look at that and think, well, that's terrible. Basically, I feel so bad, or that could have been me. Maybe I couldn't have not made it. So, there's that, right?
Well, can you tell us about any what you know about other people not making it?
I just know that for this particular program that I'm in, I don't think there are any other survivors. I think it's just me, um, which is why I see them so often. You know, it's
Well,
it's funny being a scientist. Like say you have a study or a clinical trial and everybody dies except for that one little rat that just he made it, and every now he's everyone's favorite. That I feel like that's me.
lucky you, and we have you here today. But
Yeah.
what I'd ask is, you said for the program you're in, you're probably the only survivor. But again, how do you know you're in a program? What was the conversation between you and the beings? Tell us how you got to this point of knowing.
They just eventually, ultimately told me, hey, guess what? You're so special. You're the only one. I know that they've done lots of different kinds of experiments with people to acclimate them. Um, I don't know how many or exactly how they differ from what happened with me, but I just know that what they tried with me didn't work on anyone else. And so that's cool. So they fully expected, there to be no survivors on it, but I did. So hooray for me.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's just wild to think about.
Yeah.
And again, I still want to I want to try to dive deeper into the actual experiences, like when you were asking them questions and they weren't giving you the right answers. What would they tell you in the beginning, and then finally when they did? And also, was it always the same beings, or did you see different ones at different times?
Yeah, good questions. To the first one, sometimes I just get the whole just stop asking questions. Just stop. Just don't ask, Um and that kind of made me mad. Um but to the second one, yeah, I do typically see the same handful of people. Um like there's one in particular, I've known him since the very beginning. And then I had another one. She was kind of like my handler for a while, but I feel like I drove her away because she never came back at one point, and that's fine because I didn't like her. Now I have a new handler. I do like her. She's my favorite. Um, she's nice to me, um, and she actually does come to my defense more. Nobody else really does, but she does occasionally come to my defense and seems to really care about, my feeling about things. Whereas, like the other ones, I would be like, I feel like I should get a say in what happens to me. And, the response would be basically like, they'd look at me like I'm insane. Like, that was the most insane thing I could have said. Be like, why would I ask you? Like, why would we need your input on this? That's so, that's insane, basically. It's like, wow, okay, thanks. um,
I mean, at this point, I don't know how old you are when it starts being a thing where, like, say that one handler goes away, this one comes in. It's been a handful of beings, and still to this day, I guess it's happening because you said that's your handler now. So it sounds like you this relationship you're having with these beings is it's gotten, I mean, I want to say it's gotten complicated, or not, maybe not so much complicated, but there's you're interacting with them, and you know them and they know you, and they and I want to get a little deeper into that. I mean, how did that occur? I mean, obviously you see them and you become comfortable with seeing the same face.
yeah, yeah, more or less. Yeah, I mean, it's just that. It's just if you see the same people all the time, kind of get to know them. Although they're just really cagey, with me on that. But they get to know me at least, and I do at least, have somewhat of a relationship with at least a couple of them. But yes, it's a little bit complicated, and how I feel about the whole thing. So yeah, I mean that's always been the way. That has always been the way. It's like, I might like you right now, but the resentment is always there. I just want you to know that.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
and I would think that since they are a higher being and you are doing this out of body, so you're in your light body, that all thoughts are pretty much known, except since you may not, I mean, I want to say you may not know how to read their thoughts, but they know how to read your thoughts, and they can block you from reading them. Is there something like that going on? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean you're pretty much accurate there. Yeah, I mean whatever I'm thinking, yeah, they could access that, but I do have kind of a standing agreement that they try to avoid that and give me some sense of privacy. So, they wait for me typically to say something rather than just answering what I'm thinking like before, which I think is at least nice. That is a two-way street, and there are times where, you know, I could reach out to them on a mental level, but the thing that you have to understand is that, we as humans have a certain way of organizing our thoughts, and that's going to be different than the way that they think. So the couple times where I've asked, can I see what's in your mind, um, you know, it's so much more complicated than the way that we experience reality. You can think of it like this: a human, when they're thinking, it's kind of like they've got a melody, in their head, a song, and these beings, when they're thinking, they'll have, an orchestra playing over here and another one playing over there. In fact, there's like 7 of them going at the same time. So they're having simultaneously, they're thinking completely different trains of thoughts, several of them at the same time without, getting confused or losing track, and they're able to do that all the time. They don't have to sleep, whereas we do. We as humans need a break in consciousness. That is one of the functions of sleep. We cannot withstand continuous consciousness, and that's one of the things that makes us less evolved as beings. Whereas these beings don't have to do that. They can be continuously conscious, and it doesn't bother them at all. They don't get tired. They don't need to sleep. It doesn't drive them crazy like it does us.
Okay, so here's another question. So um, you're telling us about how we work when we're in our bodies and awake, and you're also telling us about how they may work when they may be in a body of their own. So were you ever told, or did you ever know that they were also in some kind of light body themselves, but they can go back to their own? Did you ever get that information?
Yes, I did ask that directly, and I was directly told, yes, we have a body. It's a physical body, and it can show up in the physical world. You know, so that, but I think it's just easier for them to slip in between than us. And I was also told basically this kind of visitation is more common with them. They feel like it's, they feel like it's, I want to say less traumatic, but it's still bad.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say less impactful to the psyche of the person, because they can wake up and go, it was just a dream.
Yeah, it's more gentle. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, more gentle.
Yeah, it's like the other day I was looking for something in the, I don't know if you've ever heard of the law of one and the raw material and stuff, but I was looking at that, and it's like something that Ra said, and I know people that are big law one fans might say, no, he didn't say that, but I'm paraphrasing. But Ra had said something to the effect of, when the channel happened, it was back in 1981, and he was, and Ra was saying that they started making contact more through channels and more like dreams, and maybe what's happening to you, because it was less impactful for us, and it's just interesting. And he's a completely different being, or it is a completely different being, and than what you're dealing with, but still it still sounds like they're going by the same laws.
Right, yeah. It does seem like they have some kind of, I know that they have some kind of rules or laws that govern how they interact with us.
Yeah, because it seems as though we always hear that, well, we have free will, but I don't know, when things like this are happening to people like you and many others, you kind of wonder, well, just how much free will do we have? And then they talk about, oh, well, you made this agreement before you were incarnated or something. I don't know. Sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I think that's honestly that you hit right there. The most difficult thing for anyone to accept about this. And that is the big reason why I don't like to talk about it, because people believe in the just world fallacy. And I understand that that makes them feel safe. That's really important, for a lot of people. They want to believe that there's something that prevents this thing from happening to me, or well, maybe you agreed on it and you just don't remember, and I'm sure I wouldn't have done that, that sort of thing. And it's like, okay, whatever helps you sleep at night. I'm not gonna trample on your dreams here, but um, I'm on the other hand, I'm just over here like, look, I hate to be the person that says this, but as humans, there's just things that we can't control, and sometimes things happen to us like this where you don't have a choice, and you have to accept that that's just life. I mean, we all have stuff, normal things that happen to us, right? You don't get to choose having a disease or getting into a car crash necessarily, or whatever, and people still try to blame people, of course, you notice that, like, oh, you didn't pray enough or whatever. But I think the hardest thing is for people that I talk to is, accepting that, no, I didn't, to my knowledge, agree to any of this. No, I did not consent to it. Yes, I tried everything to make it go away. I'm sure if you thought of it, I did too. I'm telling you right now, I tried everything.
Okay, okay, so let me jump in again. So I remember reading, I forgot where I read it, but either way, this person said, "Oh yeah, if you want to stop any of this stuff, just call it out in Christ consciousness that they should stop, or in the infinite creator or God or whatever." And some people and I think this was on a Reddit sub, but some people were like, "No, yeah, no, that doesn't happen for everybody. It doesn't work."
Yeah, it doesn't work. That's a great way to create an atheist. I hate to say this. I used to believe as a Christian, and I do not believe any longer. Unfortunately, that was directly related because, yeah, sure, Jesus help me, God help me, no one shows up. I would, that kind of hurts, God, honestly. That hurts a little bit, I mean, this lady over here is praying for you to help her with her brownies, and you helped her out, but you can't help me. Anyway, yeah, I mean, yeah, that I don't believe in that. I don't believe in the whole imagine white lights and everything goes away. And, I mean, I tried all that crap, lighting candles and, I mean, maybe that works for some things, but for the, when it's something like this that I've had, none of that stuff's going to help. You just have to learn to live with it. Basically, that's all you can do.
I would think that maybe someone would want to have the argument or debate, well, not debate, more of an argument, saying, well, these beings are on a different level. So if you were on a different level of, some kind of energetic level, it would work better if you called out for Christ consciousness or something. But I mean, I'm just, I don't know, being devil's advocate or something. I don't know. But I mean, this definitely sounds like it's more of an ET abduction via your light body pulling you out. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, it's very interesting concepts to really think about, and you can really go down many avenues, especially when you talk about like the fractality of like consciousness and the fractality of like a higher power. But generally, what you're saying is does seem to be true. It's like you can call out for as much help as you want, but it seems to be a lot of the people who have habitual experiences, and even my brother has said this to me, where you can kind of tell somebody who has like a lifetime experiences because they know what to expect. They know really, unless they really train for it, it's very hard to stop these beings in whatever they do, just because of the sheer I'll use the word like strength, and it may be a metaphysical strength, but it's a strength that humans don't really understand empirically or academically. And I do have a question, really. So, when did you start really getting drawn to, I guess you could say, ufology or like consciousness after some of these experiences started happening? Because you've kind of been talking about this, and it does seem that you really know a good amount about, like just generally consciousness, sleep, and how there does seem to be almost like a different realm, different dimension, whatever you want to call it, whatever term, because we were talking about this, a few weeks ago briefly. So what really kind of drew you to start, I guess, like analyzing this? You kind of talked about how you kind of have like an analytic mind to begin with. When did you start reaching out in consciousness and really looking at ufology and saying, how could this actually happen? How could I actually experience this?
Yeah, I went through a long period where like I said, I was looking for things to stop what was going on. So I researched all kinds of things. I looked at different religions, different spiritualities, read lots of books. I had some friends who were into New Age, and they sort of introduced me to concepts like astral projection, and that sort of at least gave me some framework for understanding what was happening to me. And then when I was an older teenager, I found out more about, like you're saying, chakras, and that started to make more sense at the time. So I understood this, to be more of a metaphysical thing that was going on. So I've sort of over the years have like cobbled some of these things together into something resembling something coherent that maybe explains it to myself. So, but as far as like I think, like I said, I think that walk where my friend's debit card disappeared, I started really seriously considering, like I said, now this is something. It's not just something that's happening to me that I can pretend is in another plane of existence, and I can just separate that from my waking life, which is often throughout my life how I've sort of dealt with that, by trying to compartmentalize it. I think that was probably the tipping point for now looking into what things in our physical world could this possibly be.
Um, I also wanted to bring in the fact that, I mean, I know we want to protect your identity, but you also know very much about dreams and lucid dreaming, and you've even spoke at some conferences. And I wanted to ask you, how has that worked with these experiences you've had? Has it helped at all in dealing with any of this?
Yeah, I mean, I've always known about lucid dreaming since even before all this happened. So, at least I had that experience. So I've always had a lot more control over my state of consciousness than maybe the average person has, which, I do think helps me a lot on multiple levels. It helps me, number one, sort of understand, what's happening, it have some kind of context to it. And then, just having that control over my own consciousness. So every time they do something or try, at least I have some kind of toolkit, on my own that I can use to, assert my own will and my own control whenever I possibly can. But over the years, yeah, I started getting deeper into that community, joining some of the forums and websites and some of the communities, learning more about it, reading more books, meeting some of the experts in the field, and participating in research, which had been really fun, and doing some experiments myself as well. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've been teaching lucid dreaming for years and years. I've been trying to teach other things like energy work and astral projection, things that I've been taught firsthand, but um, not many people get very far with it because it is so difficult to learn. Um, so that I mean, it's a little hard for people to practice and get into because it is a lot of work with very little sort of physical reward, I guess you could say. So
Well, I was going to ask, because you're so good at controlling your consciousness, dreaming, and about, obviously you're being taken and pulled out, astral projecting or out of body. Can you tell us, for you, how you can really discern whether you're dreaming or out of body?
oh yeah, that's super easy. the dream world is kind of less real than reality. So very easy, right? Feels kind of dreamy. Things are unstable. You look at a clock and you look at a clock again. Now it's a different number. Maybe there aren't even numbers there. That's part of it. The major thing that you can tell if you know I'm out of body is you get kind of the sixth sense, which is the feeling of energy. And I really hate using that word because it's
So
Woo.
thick.
yeah, here comes the woo. Sorry guys, all aboard the woo train now. But yeah, but I'm gonna try and add some science here. Okay, so just hang on. So you have the sixth sense. It's the energy sense, and that is your big red flag that this is an out of body or astral world, because it's more real than our real world. Your senses are really heightened, all of them, um, and you have that extra sense of energy, which is, I can't stress this enough, a visceral sense as much as your physical senses that you have right now. Your sight, your hearing, your smell, your touch. It is a visceral sense. It's not a woo, kind of, vague feeling. It's something that hits you physically. You feel it. And the way that energy behaves, and I know this from going to college, it behaves a lot like the flow of electrons. And I've noticed this too with the energy work that I've unfortunately experienced, where anytime you have a flow of electrons, okay, you create a magnetic field around them. So, you have electrons moving from here to there. It creates a magnetic field, okay? And the second thing that happens when you have electrons moving is that you lose a little bit of the energy to heat. Okay, so the heat comes off of it. Think of it when, anytime you have a transfer of energy, when you're boiling a pot of hot water, some of that heat gets transferred and it, bubbles up and it escapes into the air. It's really similar. So another thing that I forgot to mention too that would happen when I had the energy work was it was hot. Like my body temperature would just skyrocket, you know. Um, I mean, I would get really, really hot and I would burn very hot. And so then when I would wake up, I would just be so, so hot. I would have to like go and cool off a little bit. And that I think was because it was a physical transfer of energy. And that's why it was painful in some ways. And that some of that energy was coming off as heat.
Okay, quick question. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed, like, on dry days, windy days, that you get shocked more than other people?
Yes, I've had, oh my God, this is going to be a good story. You're going to love this. I have the weirdest thing. Um, I break smoke detectors everywhere I go. I break them. I'm so sorry. My husband's shaking his head right now. He's had to deal with this. I'm sorry. Ever since this started, ever when I was a teenager, typically it's wherever I sleep, that wherever that room is, that smoke detector will start alarming all the, like it'll just go off, and it's when my energy's really high, like right after they did something to me, and it's like I feel it in my body, and it's like super at it. I can just feel it. It's everywhere, and the smoke detector. Oh, my dad was so mad when this started happening because we lived in an apartment, so he had to call, right, because we don't own the smoke detectors. At first, he's like, okay, I can replace the battery. He replaces the battery, doesn't work. It's still doing it. So calls, the manager, they send a guy in, they put in a brand new one, they just stick that in there, and dad's finally happy. And it was like week or 2 weeks later, happens again. It's alarming. It won't stop. It's
Okay.
beeping all the time. He's pissed. Finally, he just takes the battery out of that one and just leaves it that way. And then it happened, my parents are separated, so like, it happened to the one at my mom's house at the same period. So I just did it myself. I was like, screw this. This is really unsafe. Please do not take the battery out of your smoke detectors. PSA, but I took the battery out of the smoke detector in that room because I was getting tired of it always going off. I can't sleep, It was really annoying. Oh, and routers. Like the router happened to be directly below my bedroom, and my brother, he's an IT professional. We must have gone through like a dozen routers. Probably it was like every 6 months he had to replace the router. He was so pissed. Like
So,
the router is really far away from where we sleep right now, currently.
okay, well,
the alarm monitors.
Yeah.
I can hear your husband talking. I was gonna ask. Well, the reason why I ask is because back in the '90s, I made a friend. I was working at a grocery store, and I made a friend of one of the people that came through. But she would always say, "Oh, I can tell you have a lot of energy." I was like, "Okay," and she was a masseuse, so she would say, "Oh, you need to become a masseuse because energy flows through you. I can tell." And I was like, okay. And so she actually, I got to be friends with her, and I did start learning massage, but it's just not my bag because I don't like being in people's personal bubble. But I also bring it up because the question was about just getting shocked on a slightly windy, dry day. I get shocked like nobody's business all the time, and I always think of that friend saying, "Energy flows through you so easily." Okay, but also to get back to woo, don't worry, Adam and I are into the woo. And
Yes.
we're okay with the woo. It was funny today. I was actually watching the Kurt Jaimungal, I forget, I'm ruining his last name, interview with Lou Elizondo, and Lou had said something, okay, I know, here we go with the woo, but blah, and I was just like wanting to say, no, dude, open up the woo. Let's hear what you have to say. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, and I think that was a great clarification that you did about like the out-of-body experiences versus like the dream worlds, and really clarifying the senses. And yeah, I'm full blown woo at this point, and there's no shame. But the thing is, there is a lot of empirical evidence to very lightly start correlating this stuff. And to me, it's really all physics, and the way our physiology works. It's physics. It's magnetic forces that are just, I guess, biochemically induced. So when you take that and you separate, I guess you say, the physiology of yourself, and you go into this astral, whatever dimension you want to call it, in your astral body, you still have the physics, but you don't necessarily have the biology or the biochemical. And a lot of the work in like the Parapsychology Association, they have a lot of data, low effect size, but they have a lot of data on perception of magnetic fields and the influence of like electromagnetic fields on our physiology, especially our brain. I believe Dean Radin actually proved that humans can sense magnetic fields, but not every human is equal. So to just bring in my perspective of it, there seems to be people on this earth right now who have that sense. I like to just call it psi. That's just because that's what parapsychology calls it. And I think it's a good empirical term that is specific. And I do hate using the word energy because it's so general and it's so hard to like describe what, you could say it and mean so many different things. So I like to use psi. There are certain people in waking state, from my observation, that are more psi sensitive than the rest. And they kind of have, I guess you could say, distributions of different talents within psi. It's not one specific thing. And I've really only been full woo for about 4 years. And in that 4 years, I definitely have noticed a lot of experiencers just from talking to them personally, or looking into their stories from whatever the stories may come from. They do seem to be psi sensitive, more psi sensitive than, I guess you could say, the average person. So it's just very interesting if you look in terms of like case studies. If you start looking at these individuals in terms of like, what are the physics of them, or what's the biology of them, what's the genetics, why are they why are they quote unquote experiencers? And my leading idea is that they're more size sensitive. They're able to maintain more of that sense in this realm here. And then let's say they're able to venture into the astral, whatever you want to call it. It's just 11 out of 10. So that may be why some of the maybe why a lot of these people are it depends on what perspective and every experience taken advantage of in terms of free will. But again, that's just one of my conclusions at this point in time.
Yeah, that's pretty consistent with what I was told. Basically, that people are chosen for these kinds of programs because we have some kind of innate energy that makes it easier for them to influence us and sort of like pull us upward in our evolution, I guess is the best way to put it. So yeah, I mean that's pretty consistent. But going back to the smoke detectors, I was at my sister's house once long ago. I was house sitting for her, and that night I had like really intense energy, and the smoke detectors in her house, all of them, every single one on 3 floors, they started alarming at the exact same time. Also, the carbon monoxide detector started alarming exact same time. Now these are all on batteries, they're not connected by anything. So that was really spooky. I got really scared, because I think I was about 20 years old. I was by myself. I took her dog outside. I thought, oh my God, something's wrong. I called the fire department, like you're supposed to do. And fire department trumps in. They walk around with their carbon monoxide detector, and I'm like, nothing's here, you stupid little girl. Like, don't call back. And, it made me feel stupid. And I was like, great, cool. So I go back inside. And of course, by the time they got there, it all stopped. All the alarms, they stopped. Typical, right? And I go back inside, call my sister, and I'm like, I don't understand what happened. Like, this doesn't make sense. Are all of the batteries dead? Like, what happened? She's like, no. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, you know what? My next door neighbor, he's an electrician. If it happens again, and it's not in the middle of the night, go next door, and he's got a carbon monoxide detector in his truck. And if that makes you feel safer, you can go and have him check, and you don't have to call the fire department and have them mad at you again. I was like, okay. So the alarm, it happened again. It was like 2 a.m. the next time it happened, all of them. And this time I wasn't as freaked out because I was prepared. So I went and checked every one of them, the 3rd floor, the main floor, the basement. And I'm like, yeah, they're all alarming, all of them. The carbon monoxide and the smoke detectors, which, by the way, should not both be alarming at the same time, so that makes no sense. And I got kind of freaked out, so I called another relative, and I was like, can I stay at your house? So I slept over. I didn't even actually sleep that night. I stayed up until like 7 a.m. almost, and I was like, I better go back to the house and make sure the animals are okay, because I was worried about them. So I went back, get back in the house, everything's quiet, and I'm in the house not very long. They all start alarming again. I was like, wow, great. So this time I was like, I'm going to be smart. I'm going to run next door, and I ran next door, banged on the door. I was like, come over here right now. And the neighbor's like, okay. And so he comes over, and, I swear to God, we get up to the front door, and they all stop. It's like the frog in the cartoon. But fortunately, he could hear them from outside. So he was like, no, I believe you. Like, I heard all of those alarms going. And he walks around with a carbon monoxide detector. He's like, no, you're safe. It's okay. And I'm like, well, look, you're an electrician. What could possibly cause this? And he looks at me and goes, I don't know. It's not physically possible. Maybe it's a ghost. Well, anyway, see ya. Just leaves.
Well, I'll say this. When you said they were all on batteries, that's when you got me, because I know that I had a few friends who had fire alarms that were all hooked up together, but when you said they're on batteries, like, well, okay, well, can't explain that.
Yeah.
You got me.
Yeah, and then I actually, after that, my sister I called her like the next week or the week after. I'm like, did those alarms go off? Did you guys replace those batteries? And she's like, no. And it never happened again. They didn't touch those things for the next like year or 2 years, and then they moved away. I was like, cool. Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? You know?
Yeah, it's bizarre. That's can be a relatively common phenomenon with like interference with like anything electrical, like laptops, TVs, even in the or Caspian, the series on Caspian's case report, like TVs. I remember you mentioned light, even like street lamps. It's quite bizarre. And even one of our mod members was displaying, like I think his sister was it, who like would fry laptops and all these things, and it's very very bizarre, and it kind of goes down to like I don't know, this like almost like electromagnetic force or something, but just wild when you really think about. And I love to think about the physics of it, and it's just how could that happen?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, I wish I could figure out what it is about smoke detectors specifically.
Yeah, that one thing. Yeah, I don't. I don't know the mechanisms of smoke detectors, but maybe there's something. Just something intricate in them.
Well, I'd want to say that it's just like with paranormal. It can, maybe it is something that's just chosen. Something in this other realm is just saying, well, let's just hit all the smoke detectors. Why not? I mean, it seems like when these type of things happen with different people, it's like poltergeists. Some of them, I remember when I was so fascinated with poltergeists when I was in 5th grade. I wrote a paper on poltergeists, and that was before the movie came out. And there were water poltergeists, heat poltergeists. There were all kinds of different poltergeists, and it seems like things like this. Hey, why shouldn't it choose? I mean, if this is a paranormal thing that's happening, or if it is you and your body and your physiology, maybe it's, I don't know, you just have some kind of good frequency for routers and smoke detectors. But if it's paranormal or something, it could be choosing that just to jolt you or keep you awake some way. And then also I was going to add that that back in the 90s, when I was just kind of getting into a little woo, I've been in and out of woo for decades. And back in the 90s, I always felt that it was going to be quantum physics that would explain paranormal and stuff like that. And if it isn't going to be quantum physics, it'll be some kind of arm of it. I know that now another part of science that's beginning to come about is quantum biology. So I'll be interested to see how that works out. I work in the education field, editing videos, and I've asked some of the teachers, hey, or the biology teachers, would you be interested in doing quantum biology? Because that would be cool if you could bring that to the school. And they thought that they hadn't heard of it yet. So I'm going to be very interested to see what quantum biology brings us. But I did also want to say we are well over an hour, but I wanted to have one last question. And Adam, if you have another question, please do. My last question is that you did say that this is still happening to you, being pulled out of body and worked on. Can you tell us, excuse me, your most recent experience, what they've said, what they looked like, who was handling you, and any other details?
Oh sure. Hang on. Let me pull up. I think I wrote it in my journal. I want to say in the last week it was something like that. Last few days. I was on vacation last week. A lot of times I did negotiate that I can have vacations, and that was great. So
Okay.
yeah. At least there's some agreements here that are happening. I also, when I was in school, I negotiated that if I had a final exam or something like that, I wouldn't be bothered. That was nice.
I'm amazed to hear that you're saying you negotiated with beings.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
But they said okay.
Yeah, that was acceptable. So, nobody's here to ruin my life, basically. That's not the purpose of this whole thing. So, that's
Well, it seemed to do it to other people in the program. Apparently you're the last one alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's different. I mean, there's no reason to like make your life crap, other than, well, if you don't make it, you don't make it, I guess. But that's just neither here nor there.
And it's interesting to think of it that way because it to me it seems as though they also have a better understanding of how the universe works and where we go when we die. Like we do move on to a light body or whatever. Maybe we do get. Well, I shouldn't say maybe. I believe we do get reincarnated, but lately I've been wondering if that's a good thing too. But we can talk about that in a different episode. But nonetheless, sorry if you found your last.
Yeah, I did find it.
Hey.
There's not a lot here, but basically, I was pulled out and I was in this little white room. It had a window on one side where people could see in. I remember I got up and I went over to the window. I was banging on it because I was not happy that I was there, stuck in this stupid little room. I think they're talking about doing something, some kind of medical thing to me, and I did not want to do that. So I was trying to get out. I don't think I did. And then I remember there's a woman that I didn't know, and she said something like, "This is more successful on women than it is men." Um, and then I don't think there was much more after that. I remember I almost lost consciousness, and one of the ones that I know was talking to me, but I don't remember what he was saying anymore. He was saying something in my ear, and I couldn't remember what it was. I think he was trying to make me feel better, something like that. So that was, I think that was on my trip. So, or no, maybe it was Sunday when I got back. What day was that? Anyway, yeah.
So they carried out the medical experiment.
Yeah, but fortunately I didn't remember this one. So, yay.
Right. I guess I guess that's another thing. Maybe if we have you on again, you can give us more details about other experiments that you actually remember, because I know that you've told me that some of them were incredibly painful. And again, I have to think. I keep thinking of you being worked on physically, but this is your light body that they're doing this to you, and you're feeling immense pain.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately that has caused some damage to my physical body though, because some of the stuff, I mean, one thing in particular really banged up like my right hip and my base of my spine. So, I do have bad days where I still feel that pain, like it's hard for me to walk. So, I mean, it kind of sucks, you know.
Do you ever go to a doctor and they can, is this something more like a back pain where they can't really see it, or do you have any physical things that a doctor can see and they say, oh, how did you do this? Well, I fell down a flight of stairs, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I have a couple of those stories, but I think that that might have to be another time,
Okay.
because I don't want to go on too long. But the short version of that is yes. There's some things like that, and then there have been some things where I've had pain, and I go to the hospital or the doctor, and they're like, can't find anything. So sort of had both of those.
Okay. Well, Adam, final words? Any final question?
Um, yeah, I think it's just a good point to mention that, everything really is connected, everything is correlated, especially when you have the physical body, whatever you want to call it, the astral body, soul, chakra system, time body, it is linked. It is linked to us here, but like I kind of described earlier, you may not really have a sense for it. Sometimes you have to train, or sometimes you have to almost fall into it in time. But some residuals like that can be very, very common. Yeah, that's all I got.
Well, thank you, Deirdre, for coming on with us.
Yeah,
Fascinating. Yeah, fascinating story, and we definitely have to have you on again because I want to hear more details about. It sounds kind of sick, I guess, to say I want to hear more details about the pain that you suffered.
That's fair. No, I understand.
But it's just yeah, it's just so fascinating to hear this, and hopefully we'll see comments in the video, and maybe people join the Discord, um, and maybe something on Reddit as well, some posts and comments, and people can say, yeah, I've had that same experience with those people. We can only hope. But again, thank you so much for coming on with us.
Yes, thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I do hope, if somebody does have something similar, I would absolutely love to get into contact with them.
Well, we'll make it happen.
Thank you.